Hello and welcome to the Rights of Women interviews. I am absolutely delighted to be here today with Helen McClory, writer of Flesh of the Peach and also short story collection, which you're going to tell me the title of because it's totally slipped out of my head.
It's On the Edges of Vision.
On the Edges of Vision, there we go. And Helen's also with, oh God, I'll edit that bit out. Helen won the Saltaire First Book Awards for On the Edges of Vision as well, and now you've got a novel which is interesting because it's a novel in flash fiction, which we'll talk about in a minute, which has been published by Freight Press. So we're here mostly to talk about the novel, and where I wanted to start was about the idea. I don't want to say too much about it. Some people have come to hear from the review, so they will have read that bit. But yeah, tell us a little bit about where the idea came from before we
for the novel itself.
Yeah.
Well, I first started off with the image of a greenhouse made of bottles, of glass bottles.
Oh.
And I was going to have a character who had a greenhouse that they'd constructed themselves on kind of a wilderness space. And eventually, as the book turned out, I didn't have that at all, but I did have a greenhouse and quite a lot of alcohol bottles appearing in the story. So from there it kind of grew outwards and it became this story of the woman journeying and finding, you know, the limits of her own grief and her own poor choices and where that leads her, basically.
Yeah, so well, that's quite nice because that leads into my question about I would say it's a road trip novel, and it's about escaping something, possibly yourself, not yourself obviously, but the character's self.
Yeah, and like how you can't do that really easily.
And yeah, so she sets off on this road trip, and then even when she gets to the place she's looking for, which is her mother's house in New Mexico, she still goes on other road trips, although with someone else at that point. So I was interested in your thinking about a woman going on a road trip, because it's not something that occurs very much in fiction either. Men, yes, women don't go on road trips on their own. So why the road trip and a single female?
Well, the road trip was because I knew I wanted to set the novel in New Mexico, but I didn't really have any idea of what New Mexico was like. So I got a ticket for the Greyhound bus from New York to New Mexico and to Albuquerque, and then hired a car up. I went with my husband, I wasn't alone, which was great because the journey as it happens it's grim.
Right.
It's the air conditioning breaks down a lot, and some of the incidents that happened in the book actually happened to me in actuality, and it was kind of unpleasant. But that kind of stuff was gold, and I just thought, you know, if I was on my own experiencing this, it would have much more of an impact on my sense of safety, especially if I was dealing with all the other issues that Sarah Brown deals with. So that kind of came all together like that quite neatly.
Right. So on the back of this, it's sort of sideways to it. Women road trip novels. Why don't we have loads of them?
Yeah, I know. I actually asked that question on Twitter, and a few people came up with stuff, but a lot of what they said was ideas that were a step away from that.
Right.
So, for example, people mentioned Lyra of Northern Lights trilogy because she goes on a journey, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. And there was a couple of other sci-fi ones that people mentioned, and then people just wanted to tell me about all the amazing solo true life journeys that people have done, and I was like, yeah, that is fantastic and really influential and really cool. And one of the books I read before writing this was Isabella Bird's Journey in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, I haven't come across that.
Oh, it's fantastic. It was one of the earliest tourists, female tourists across the US was Isabella Bird. I think she was Welsh.
Okay.
And she basically just toured around on her own, having fun, just solo, like riding across the Rocky Mountains on a horse by herself in snowdrifts and getting lost.
Right. Wow.
And then like shacking up with a man called Mountain Jim. She delicately referred to that.
Is that on his birth certificate?
Mountain Jim. No, but that's how she always calls it. So it had that aspect of going into the wilderness and kind of shacking up in a cabin, having affairs, and you know, but doing it all on her own. But she was much more bold, and I love that. I love that is there as a really inspiring thing. But then, there's no fictional narratives of that I can not in the same way, not in a kind of beat poet way either. I don't know. They're out there. People did sort of supply them, so I've got a bit more of a reading list, I think.
Right. So check Helen's Twitter if you're looking for some. Brilliant. So I also wanted to if we talk about Sarah. I want to talk about unlikable women characters. It feels like the right place to go there because we've talked about this on Twitter as well, and it's something that comes up quite a lot on social media, and I talk about it a lot on my blog because I read a lot that's got unlikable women in. And I'm just going to read a quote from the book because I think there's a really interesting bit about Sarah, and she recognises herself, doesn't she? Because she says, what could she want given that she seemed to everyone a pretty cactus or a thistle pitched all by itself among the rocks, casting a twisted shadow. So there's that recognition, and she does some pretty grim things in the book.
Yeah, she does.
So well, did you set out to write a woman who's, I'm going to do quote marks, unlikable, because I think that's nonsense, but anyway, did you set out to write someone like that, and why, and did you think about how readers might be affected by that?
I think I didn't set out to write someone unlikable. I set out to write someone who was complex and interesting and did stuff that maybe... So people in fiction are always doing stuff, generally speaking, that we maybe don't approve of or wouldn't do, but are interesting.
Yes.
And you wouldn't maybe want to be best friends with a lot of different people. Like, think of Humbert from Lolita. Who wants to go anywhere near that man? He's appalling, but he's such an interesting character.
Yeah.
So, and all of Jean Rhys's fictional heroines are just disasters. But if they weren't disasters, they'd be comforting and lovely and nice. But there would be something missing, a piece missing. So I wanted to write someone who was interesting and explore that. And I was surprised myself about where it went.
Right.
In terms of, I don't want to give away anything, but the violence in her sort of emerged from that. The forces of grief came together to propel the character towards that direction. So that it was just a kind of happy accident, I think. And then I'm not sure how readers respond exactly to unlikable women. I did put the quote at the beginning, just to let people know, just to go, okay, it's all right if you don't like her. That's fine. I meant that. Because I think sometimes when people read unlikable female characters by female novelists, there's maybe a little bit of a sense that the author has failed in not making them likable.
Right, yeah.
And I have actually had a couple of reviews online where people were like, I didn't like her.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, it's all right. She's not your friend.
Yeah, that's because I think, well, why would you care? And actually, it made me want to compare the character. It's not necessarily your writing, but the character and the ideas to the sort of things that Tessa Moshfegh does, who I love, and she's coming for a lot of flack as well.
Yeah.
And I think actually, like you said, they're interesting, and and I didn't know where. I had a sense of where she might go. They got to a point where I had a sense of where she might be going, but that created this tension, and I just thought, oh, you're kind of spiky, and I like the fact she's spiky and a bit unpredictable. And human.
Exactly. Like the characters of fiction are. What was it? Who said it? There was an actress who said that a well-behaved woman rarely makes history.
Yes.
So that's the kind of aspect there.
Sod them. Don't be well behaved. So alongside this idea of unlikable women, you have dedicated the book to unlikable women. I'll read it you because it's a great dedication. To all the unlikable women in fiction and out with it. Why did you decide to dedicate the book to unlikable women?
I think that the stories that I want to see and the characters in fiction, in film, especially TV, I want to see the women behaving as badly as men are allowed to behave.
Yes.
And I'm like, you're my heroine, even though I don't want to hang out with you, and you're kind of appalling. But you're interesting, you're exciting, you're showing this other dimension of women, showing that women have multiple dimensions and are capable of awful things. And I want that truth, that essential truth that is filtered in fiction, to kind of be there always. And I just wanted to shout out to those other people who are being brave and making that decision too.
Yeah, that's really nice. And I think, so we're sort of hitting on talking about representation again, which I'm talking about a lot in interviews at the minute because it's become this sort of big conversation, at least, well, on social media and in the publishing industry. It's in the bookseller every other week, I think, at the minute, pretty much. And you've obviously, there's something about representation of women, because we've got this different representation, but also your character is bisexual and mixed race, but that's not really central to the story. It's mentioned and it's there. So I just wondered about whether it was a conscious choice, or whether it was just that's who you wanted to write and who the character was, or whether you were thinking about those things when you did that.
It was one of those ones that wasn't exactly a conscious choice to begin with, but became like, it made sense for the character more and more that she would be in a slightly marginalised position in different ways. And I wanted her to have something in her life with her bisexuality to show that she wasn't, hopeless at everything. That she had managed something well enough, you know.
Yeah.
She's very comfortable with her sexuality.
Yeah.
She's comfortable with who she is in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and with being mixed race as well, it's not something she's super uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Even though obviously she faces challenges because of that. I just don't feel like I was capable of exploring in a very meaningful way, but I wanted it to be there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show that, yeah, she has a grasp on something and she can fulfill it, and her sexuality doesn't well, it's not that it doesn't define who she is, because obviously it does to a degree, but it doesn't limit her, and it doesn't mean that she isn't capable of having awful choices in her life come up that are not related to it, or that, you know, she has a relationship with a woman that's disastrous because the woman is married, and so it's not like her bisexuality makes her a heroic figure. There's nothing about it. It's just a fact of who she is, and she's handling it reasonably well.
Yeah.
I liked. It sort of was like a good coincidence that I started out on that way, and then it shaped the character going forward.
Great. I want to talk a bit about the structure of the book, because I hope I got this right at the beginning, that you described it as a sort of flash fiction novel, because all the chapters are some are very short, some are slightly longer, but I think everything's under 1,000 words. Is that right? Was that a conscious choice to write it like that?
Yeah, it was, and I think because I was stumbling on flash fiction writing at the time that I was writing this, and I loved it. I loved how much you could condense into this tiny space, almost like poetry, but with a stronger narrative drive. And I really wanted to figure out what you could do with that in terms of taking it over a longer period of time, but also allowing you to put lots of different things in. I don't think I fully pushed the limits of what you could do with flash novel, because I think you could have 100 stories that still made up a whole novel if you were smart enough, and I don't think I am. That it was a great way of experimenting with that form, and I was really interested to see it. And now there are a few flash fiction novels out there, but they're more like the length of even under a novella.
Right.
So I'm
very short.
Very, very short, but they pack in a whole lot as well. So I'm like, I'm interested to see if other full-length novels will come out of that, or there'll be more out in the world as flash fiction's popularity grows. Yeah. Which I hope it does.
Did you find it made your writing more concentrated? Because I think there's something really interesting in the language that you use that I think's poetic in certain points, and I wonder whether that came out of that sort of it had to be concentrated when you were writing it.
I think that was just more my style is super concentrated. I used to write poetry, but I wasn't all that good at it because I felt like it became very sterile when I did it.
Right.
So I like that flash fiction just sort of bursts that open, and you can be a bit messier and a bit loose, but I still have that desire to write really tight little sentences and edit it down and keep it in a small space. And so that's just a part of how I write. I'd love to be able to actually write in a more fluid manner that goes on for longer. Like, I'm never going to write a long novel, I think, because I just can't. I don't have the energy. I'm so tired.
Fair enough. And I wanted to ask about Sarah as an artist in the novel, or a failed artist possibly, and her mother was an artist. And there's some really interesting things I think that you have to say about art that I'm not going to go into too much because I think people should read it and find out. But how do you view your art in relation to the world?
I feel very grand describing a novel as art. I think that when I was writing this novel, I chose to make her an artist because I was kind of crap at art but loved it. Right. And so I took lots of little classes here and there, and I loved it through school, but I knew I was never going to be good enough. Right. So I wondered, this character, and she's making art, and she's got her mother in the background that she's responding to against, setting herself against, but also being inspired by, maybe in spite of herself. So perhaps she's like me, she doesn't really have a lot of innate ability or the dedication to push herself further, but she's trying to do that to emulate her mother. Yeah. And so, it's that side of me that I'm exploring, the failed artist. But the person who enjoys making art at the same time, so I don't have the same pressures that she does, because I'm not convinced I'm going to ever make anything meaningful in that way, in a kind of visual art way.
I was going to say, I'd argue that you've made something meaningful with the book. And the last thing I wanted to ask about, same question that I ask everyone, is that my blog is about female writers, as you know. Have you read anything by a woman writer recently that we should all be rushing off to read?
Yeah, I just finished Patty Yumi Cottrell's Sorry to Disrupt the Peace.
Yes.
Have you read that?
No, but it's on my pile and I've been told it's very good.
Yes, it's really good, and it's very interesting to me because this is one of those weird selfish things that the main character is called Helen, which you never find a protagonist called Helen. I'm sure you don't find many called Naomi as well.
There is a character in The Essex Serpent that I got very excited about. Yeah.
Well, I don't know why.
They're few and far between.
Yeah, when you see someone who has the same name. So yeah, her book is about someone exploring grief as well.
Yeah.
But it's in this wonderfully Miranda July sort of sense of humour and poignancy,
Right.
but also really dry, and it kind of takes you along in this kind of dry, remote way until it just smacks you in the gut, and I really recommend it.
Fantastic. You had me at Miranda July because I love her too, so that's definitely going up the pile. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Helen. So The Flesh of the Peach is out now. Looks like this. There is a link below to buy it. If you have come straight to YouTube, if you go to my blog, The Rights of Woman, there is a review of the book on. I strongly recommend reading the review as well, because there's other things that we've not talked about that's in there that I can't tell you how much I love this book. I think it's brilliant. So yeah, go ahead, go over there and read about it. Okay, thank you. See you soon.